Scanning for audio.
Welcome once again to For Your Consideration, the single most popular thing on my podcast feed by far. This is episode 8. And this time we are doing Operation U-Tree in space. No, we're not. We're doing Blake 7. We are.
Wow.
We are doing Blake 7, episode 1 and 2. What I'm saying is that there is a definite non-existent theme in episode 1, which we'll discuss in a minute. Okay, so
yes.
I chose Blake 7 because it is the single most Doctor Who adjacent program in existence. Arguably, Hitchhiker's Guide could be the other one as well, but I just no. This one's got, I think, more Doctor Who-ness about it than Hitchhiker's.
I think from a production point of view, it definitely is more Doctor Who-y than Hitchhiker's ever was.
And there's a definite urban myth out there where the Federation were actually meant to be the Daleks at some point.
Well, I think it was the invasion from Andromeda at the end of Series 2 was going to be the Daleks.
Ah, that makes
that's what I had read.
Sense. We see exactly, but I'm sure we'll discuss that. So now I elected to go for episode 1 and 2. I was going to go for 1, 2, and 3. Because, as far as I'm concerned, they're the complete setup of the program. Let me see. But no, I've got off topic. So.
Arguably, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4 because Callie doesn't join until episode 4. But yes, I agree with you. That 1 and 2 definitely doesn't get you to Blake 7. No. But yeah, you don't get to the 7th member of the crew until episode 4. But anyway, Michael, why have you chosen why have you chosen Doctor Who? Why have you chosen Blake 7 for us to talk about? What is your history with the show?
History with the show, I remember
this.
Right, okay, so the obviously I'm of a certain age, and did we ever work it out? Am I a decade older than you, or is it actually
you're
more?
Slightly more than a decade older than me.
We'll call it. Well, okay, so it's 1978. It's the winter, so it's 77, 78. Now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is true, but I've got a distinct feeling that although everyone says Star Wars came out in 1977, it did in America. In the UK, we got it in 78. We knew of its existence, but it was one of those things that eventually arrived. Now, that's my memory of Star Wars. So Star Wars is happening simultaneously with this. You see, you're going to spoil it now by introducing facts.
It's probably about right. You keep talking, and I will find out.
So
UK
everyone in the
dates.
world says, Star Wars was 1977, but I think it was 78 in this country, which would have made me 6. So this is what it's a winter of discontent kind of thing. There's a lot of strikes,
you're absolutely correct.
Cuts.
You're absolutely correct.
So every bugger in the world bangs on about Star Wars being 1977, and it's not. For us,
so Blake
78.
Blake 7, Episode 1, 2nd of January 1978. Star Wars released in the UK 29th of January 1978. So we were... it came out just before Episode 5 of Blake 7 was broadcast in the UK.
Now, I know they were aware of its influence out there, and it filled the old Softly slot, apparently, which was the spin-off from Z-Cars. But basically... I think it was Monday nights. Now, in my head, I've only done this by research, because I thought it was like Friday nights, but I thought everything was a Friday night. I thought Red Dwarf was a Friday night, but it's not. It's Monday night.
Monday nights.
And it's miserable January, okay? There's nothing else on. It's cold, it's dark, nothing else to do. There's power cuts, there's apparently unburied bodies. It's that kind of thing, okay? It's one of those, there's mountains of rubbish. It's not a good time to be from the UK. The UK is quite... It looks a lot like 1984, to be honest. It's kind of not in a great place, and it's about to get a lot worse if you're from the northeast, because the 80s were loads of fun. for those people not familiar, the Northeast is what some Americans call themselves the Rust Belt, where there was lots of. It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, hours of fun dedicated to what it could essentially be seen by episode 1 and possibly episode 2 as quite a miserable bit of sci-fi. But I remember watching it
just
with my
to
mum.
kind of just to fix it from a Doctor Who point of view.
Yeah.
Underworld.
Wow. Okay, so we've got a lot of CSO and a lot of budgets and a lot of rampant inflation going on, affecting production values.
Yes. So you've got Blake 7 broadcast on the Monday, and the following Saturday, after a Christmas break, you've got Underworld, and then obviously Invasion of Time. So this is the back end of season 15 of Doctor Who, coinciding with the first series of Blake 7.
So it's Leela-tastic.
Yes.
Right. So see, do I remember Underworld being on? I always thought my first Doctor Who memory of TV that it was concrete is Your Destiny of the Daleks, sort of Creature from the Pit season, because I've got distinct memories of the Creature from the Pit. But anyway, that's another.
That would have been 2 seasons down the line.
That was 2 seasons further on. Right. Okay. So
watching
it with
we'll
my
get
mum.
to this in Doctor. We'll get to this in Spot the Doctor Who actor. But there is an actor who is in one episode of Blake 7 that we looked at, and an episode of Underworld. So he was clearly kind of riding high in the BBC sci-fi charts at the time.
Excellent. So I've got distinct memories of watching this with my mum. I think my dad was doing a lot of extra hours at work at the time, before unemployment arrived, and that's lots of that's standard for the Northeast. Okay, so I definitely watched this with my mum. She was quite taken with it because it's not the fastest of narratives, and she likes something that can absorb you while she's knitting. I distinctly remember there's a lot of knitting going on in the early 80s and the late 70s. And I remember watching Blake 7 with her. Now, I also remember watching the final episode of Blake 7 with its upbeat, uplifting ending. And I think that destroys most of a New Year or Christmas at some point. But that's what we get to eventually. Anyway, so I stuck with Blake 7 for the entirety of its run because it was just kind of on. And I enjoyed it. I mean, that's it. And I knew, for me, I think growing up, it was kind of the British... It was a bit like Star Trek, but it was a bit there was a bit Robin Hood thing going on. I didn't get the major political themes until years later when I came back to it as a VHS release, which I bought sort of religiously when they were coming out. It was 2 episodes per tape.
How much of episode 1 went over your head?
Because when I'm 6, I'm thinking, man finds some people who he's been wrongly accused of something, and he's being sent to a prison. That's it. That's kind of the entirety of the narrative. I remember liking the spaceship in episode 2, because I've got a Liberator here. I've got the Corgi Liberator on the shelf behind me next to the Futurama ship. I'm a big... I liked it. It was just nice, but obviously I didn't get the major political ramifications, what it was actually saying about society, all of that business until later. So basically, the more I rewatched it and the older I got, the more it spoke to me and the better it got. So it kind of got better. It does, given the stuff we've been talking about recently. It's got Prisoner vibes without me realising, that they have messed with Blake's head. Episode 1 specifically is very prisonery. Because they've messed with his head, then they've messed with his head again, then they've messed with his head again. And it isn't until episode 2 where Zen basically just gives him a massive nervous breakdown that's mentioned in episode 1, saying that would clear his head out completely. And that's what saves him and gives them the Liberator, is because if anybody wasn't completely messed in the head, went on board the Liberator, or Deep Space Vehicle 1 as it becomes later known, because that's its apparent real name, it's very boring, then that's what saves everyone, is the fact that he's had his brain manipulated by the best. But even Villa, or Vila as he gets called once in this for no reason, he's had his head adjusted by the best in the business. So everyone's having psychomanipulation going on at some point, and there's a lot of that going on. So basically, I liked it. It was nice. It hung around in my consciousness when I came back to it on VHS, which I did because friend of mine made a student version of Blake 7 called Blake 7 The Next Generation, which I don't have on VHS and I don't have in existence anywhere, and I don't think it exists on YouTube. But she showed me it and I went, that's really cool. It was really funny. It was like the Children of Blake 7 kind of thing. It was literally The Next Generation. It was a student production. It was tongue-in-cheek, but it was made with total love. And it finished with I lost my heart to a Starship Trooper. I remember that distinctly. And there was a lot of people wearing bin bags, and those guns that you use to seal silicon in bathrooms, as the guns that they were the Empire, the Federation. But yeah, I know, looking back on it now, it's Terry Nation doing a lot of Terry Nation-y things. It's like, oh, it's a dodgy society. Oh, it's people who've had their minds. There's a lot of
it's somebody called
using
Tarrant.
the word tropes. It's another person called Tarrant, and then later on there'll be another person called Tarrant and another Tarrant, which apparently was his nickname for his wife, which is why they kept using it. I don't know if that's true or not. You see, there's so much received fan wisdom. God knows what's true and what's not.
I did have Terry Nation's autobiography.
That's my background with it. Yes.
I did have Terry Nation's biography. Okay. At least I thought I still had Terry Nation's biography, but I'm looking at my shelf and it's not there. I think I may have got rid of it.
You have not lent it to me.
No, I got it. I think I got it for an essay that I wrote when I was in Oxford, because I needed some source material for an essay. So I remember reading it, and not a lot of it stuck. But there must have been a bit about Blake 7 in it, but I don't remember what it said about him writing Blake 7.
So my research for this particular chat has come from three sources. One, I've actually bothered to watch the episodes, because what I did was I went, sod it, I don't own the BBC DVDs. They're not going to release them on Blu-ray. I'm going to see how much they are on eBay. So I nipped out and I had a look, and I got the entire set for like 20 quid. So if you're a Blake 7 fan, now's the time to get them on DVD, because let's face it, if you've got an upscaler, it's not going to make much difference.
And you sent your old discs to me.
I certainly did,
Which is very kind of
I'm
you.
Not trying to manipulate you into doing some extended rewatch of Blake 7. I am not doing that. No matter how many people have suggested that after my initial rants about Doctor Who and the fact that I need to talk about something else. So I also got a couple of books, which I already owned, which was Liberation, which is Alan Stevens and Fiona Moore's book with the foreword by David Maloney, and that's very in-depth and is nice, and the reviews of the individual episodes are very good. But obviously, the go-to text to know of anything about Blake 7 is Adventures of the Wife and Blake by Neil Perriman and, Sue. Because you've got people taking the piss, and you've got a nice breakdown. And also, Neil manages beautifully to capture an episode's action in very few words. There's a definite economy of language, which is lovely. So I would recommend those two books, which are not very expensive at all, and you can get them on Kindle as well, because the Liberation one's massively thick if you see it in the flesh. And it's just really nice. So that's my experience of Blake 7, and I watched it all the way to the end, and I even quite liked it. I'm sure I made a cardboard slave at one point, because I just liked the ships. The designs were great. Oh, there was once an exhibition in Sunderland of the original models, which was just up the road from the art college, what thingy park? What was it called? Because I know we went to the same university, but we didn't, because I went to the old art college, the one where the bloke who directed Aliens, who didn't design the Dalek, Ridley Scott went to the same art college. But it was just up the road. There was a little art gallery, and there was the original Liberator, and a lot of props were on display. And I remember being very excited about that, because the Liberator was massive. Cool.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it was a rebuild. Yeah.
This is what we have. One thing we need to talk about is the lovely model shots, and then the very cheap cutout animation.
Yeah, true. So that's my experience.
I'd forgotten that starts that early. I thought it was they'd run out of money, but you've got the nice shot of the Liberator, but then at the end of the episode, it's like, and here it is going away in cutout animation style.
It really does look like that Microsoft program where you just have text flying towards you and things for doing presentations, PowerPoint. It looks like you could have animated Blake 7 on PowerPoint, which is brilliant.
Yes. So did you want to know my history with Blake 7?
Why? You know what? Why not? Because obviously I've got all sorts of stuff going on. I've got like the annuals and just general things. Even making a little Liberator bracelet, of Blue Peter. I did all of that. I was so the target audience.
Yes. Well, so by the time I was born, Blake Seven had been and gone. Obviously, I don't need to talk about how I got into Doctor Who and stuff like that. But at some point, I became aware of Blake Seven as being, like you say, this thing that was made by the BBC, adjacent to Doctor Who. I can't tell you exactly when I watched it, but I know that I borrowed the discs from Love Film when Love Film was a thing. For those younger listeners, Love Film was a rival to Netflix when Netflix when they both basically rented you discs. It was like an online blockbuster.
Nice.
And so you had a subscription, and you could either have like so many discs a month, or if you had the highest subscription, which is what I did, you could have however many discs at a time, and it was basically however fast you sent them back, they would send you more. And you basically you'd have a list of ones that you wanted, and you had to kind of populate your list with at least sort of 10 things, I think, because they couldn't always guarantee to have stuff in stock. And you could prioritize things, and you could say, I really want this one next, and they would try and send you your top priorities, but you wouldn't always get your top priorities. You'd get something off your list.
Yeah.
And so clearly at some point, having been told by... In fact, I mean, it was after I was aware of you. So it may even have been you talking about it, you or Radio Free Scar, anybody in the podcasting world mentioning Blake Seven. Like, probably went, I should watch this at some point. So so I just got the discs, and they gradually sent them to me over a period of however long. I suspect it was when I was living in Oxford. So sometime in the last 10, 15 years, probably more like 15 years, I think. I watched the whole lot. And that was it. And I haven't watched any of them since. I think I probably read the Wife in Space blog when they did it on the blog.
Yeah, because they did Doctor Who first, then they went, what can we do next? And weirdly, the introduction to the Blake Seven one, they deal with very similar. It's like, well, we could do Star Cops, and they like list a lot of the things that we're discussing.
Yeah,
they're going, well, we can't do Star Cops. There's not very many episodes. Yeah. And it's like, okay, fine. Yeah. So and then they hit Blake Seven, and it's just nice.
And they do it. That was it really. I remember enjoying it. I haven't watched it since, so I've literally watched every episode once up until the point where you said a couple of weeks ago we're doing Blake Seven. So this is the first time I've seen episodes 1 and 2 again. So I had a vague recollection of kind of how the story kind of went. But yeah, I mean, if I can find the time to watch the other 50 episodes,
Fair enough. Although you did message me and go, I'd forgotten how bleak this was. And God, you're right. Episode 1.
Episode 1 is just,
Yeah, that's the reason I didn't just choose a Let's Do Episode 1. For a start, it's Earthbound. So you're like, well, it's a space story. And I know it's sci-fi in many, many senses. But it's still like, oh, it's an Earthbound story. Fair enough. Let's get you into space. And that's why I went episode 2. But like you said, ideally, you watch the first 4. And once you've watched the first 4, you're like, well, there's only 8, 9 left. Let's just keep going.
Yes. But you don't really... The first 2 episodes are necessary setup, I guess. But they are atypical of the show as a whole, which the format of which is... They're on the Liberator, which is this vastly overpowered ship compared to everything else that the Federation has. Yeah. And there's a planet of the week, and there's a evil plot of the week, or whatever. I guess the other thing we haven't mentioned is the fact that the main villain of the show, she doesn't turn up until episode 6, I think.
She's Servalan, Jacqueline Pierce,
the evil Servalan. Yeah, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah. Yes, episode 6 introduces Jacqueline Pierce as Servalan and Stephen Grief as Travis.
Yeah, she's in the reboot. She's like a primary character straight off the bat. It might as well be called Servalan, the TV series, not the TV series, the audio.
Oh, we're talking about
B7 Media.
The B7 Audios, right?
Yeah, she is the main thrust, and yeah, but she's brilliant. Jacqueline Pearce, she's so good that she's just the center of the thing. And I know there's the whole thing about, oh yeah, I wrote the character as a male and then we got Jacqueline Pearce in to play it, but she's just great. She does steal the show very much so. And in her biography, she actually says, because she was seeing someone in the States, you can read the biography for the actual mechanics of that. She left the series with no cash. She was completely out of money because she kept flying to America to see someone. And she was massively exhausted at the end of series 4. So, yeah, because you would think, oh, yeah, you've done most of 4 seasons. You should be comfortably well off. And that just wasn't true. And I know you're working for the BBC, so you're not going to build it. So here we are. Now, not the elephant in the room, but the important thing is it's called Blake 7. Now, for a start, the apostrophe's missing, which I know has annoyed 1,000 people. The TV series is not called Terry Nation's Blake 7, although arguably it is because it's on all of the stuff with his little signature above the name. So you've got, well, you messaged me, how many episodes are there with actual 7 Blake's 7s? And does Blake count as one of the 7?
Yes.
Right.
He has to be.
Is it his 7? Because has he got 7 people under him? Oh, it's okay. So my reply was...
Well, okay.
Do you count Aurak? Do you count Zen?
Well, let's count it up. Okay, so you've got Blake, you've got Jenna, and you've got Villa. So you've got the 3 of them by the end of episode 1.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of potential other people who, when you're watching it, going, who's that? Oh, they could be one of the 7. Oh, there's 7 people in the title. There's also a massive spaceship in the title, which I've not seen.
Yeah. You've got the guy who gets kind of covered in foam in episode 2, who you're kind of like, once you've watched the series once, you're like, well, he clearly is not going to make it, but he's a potential.
Well, yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
So at the end of episode 1, you've got the 3 of them. You've got Blake, Jenna, and Villa.
Yeah.
Episode 2 introduces Avon and Gan, so that gets you to 5. Then obviously at the end of episode 2, Jenna and Avon and Blake have gone off, and you don't know what's going to happen to Villa and Gan at that point.
Yep.
You see Zen in episode 2, but he doesn't speak, so Zen isn't properly introduced until episode 3.
Yep.
Which gets you to 6, and then Callie joins in episode 4, which gets you to 7. Right? I don't think there's any other way of counting the original 7 other than that's the original 7, unless, as you said, you count the Liberator as, Zen and the Liberator as kind of one.
Yeah, because
character.
The name Zen is what Zen calls themselves. Liberator is the name that is taken from Callie's head, and Zen says Jenna's head. Sorry, yeah. And then you are, and Zen says you need a visual focal point to see me. Yeah. So that's why I think that it's actually the ship's Zen. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, for that reason.
But either way,
things, yeah.
Either way, that's your 7: Blake, Jenna, Avon, Villa, Gan, Callie, and Zen. Right, that's your 7.
Okay,
right.
That's me 7. Right.
So if you're going to count Zen, the ship, you have to then count Aurak, right? Because Aurak essentially becomes a member of the crew at the end of series 1.
Yes. And
stays until I don't know.
Well, the end.
Does Aurak stay all the way through? I can't remember what happens to Aurak.
Yes.
Okay. So then essentially it becomes Blake's 8.
I think Zen might actually get smashed in the crash on Edam, Gouda Prime, whatever you want to call it, on the final episode.
No, I know. I mean, obviously Zen is destroyed at the end of series 3.
Not Zen, Aurak.
Yeah,
Aurak.
Yeah. So obviously there are going to be spoilers here. So again, as usual, if you haven't seen Blake 7, we are going to spoil things here. So it's therefore Blake's 8 up until the point that Gan dies.
Yes.
Which is partway through series 2. So
which is a massive shock, even when you watch it again now. Yeah.
At which point it becomes Blake's 7 again.
Yep.
Until the end of series 2, at which point Blake leaves.
Yep. So it's
for pretty
not
much the whole of the
Blake's
rest. A clone of him appears in series 3, and then the real Blake appears again at the end of series 4, where he dies.
I always thought the clone was in episode. No, the clone is in.
Or is it the clone at the end of series 2?
The clone's in series 2 because it's the Clone Masters, and Big Finish have done a lovely Clone Masters box set. But the Clone Masters, because there's Blake versus Blake, and the other Blake goes off because there's a whole. Is that the Immy Pack episode? Oh, I'm confused now.
I can't remember now. I mean, the Wikipedia article says that Gareth Thomas appears in both series 3 and 4 as a guest. So there's clearly a series 3 episode where he does appear as the clone. And then obviously he appears in the final episode, which is called Blake. So, and then obviously from series 3 onwards, it's essentially Avon who's in charge of however many people he's got. Avon's however many. I can't be bothered to add it up. But you get Gisette Simon as Dana Mellenby and Stephen Pacey as Del Tarrant joining in 3 and 4 to essentially replace Jenna and Blake. And then Glennis Barber as Sue Lynn in series 4 to replace Callie.
Yeah.
Talking of very quick sidebar, I once met a girl called Callie.
Nice. In
Oxford, who I didn't know very well, but she was sort of on the fringes of my church group. And I said to her, I was like, I've never met anybody called Callie. Are you named after the character from Blake 7? And she said, yes, I am. Or I think I said, were your parents fans of Blake 7 or something? And she was like, yes.
Nice.
I don't think she was entirely kind of excited by the fact that she was named after a character from Blake 7.
She's wrong. Own it.
And I think I can't remember. She possibly was like, you're the first person, or you're the only person that's ever figured that out. Because I guess this is the thing. For us, in the sort of sci-fi world, Blake 7 exists on the same level as Doctor Who. They're things that we're aware of.
Yeah.
But to people out in the world out there, Doctor Who is obviously still very much zeitgeisty, up and down, but it's still well known that what Doctor Who is. But I suspect you interviewed most people in the street in the UK and said, "Have you heard of Blake 7?" Particularly under a certain age, they would.
Under a certain age, forget it.
What are you talking about?
Its last big hurrah was on UK Gold. So yeah.
Yes, but you're talking about somebody who's a similar age to me. So, and obviously her parents would have been a little bit. Would have been whatever age they were in the late 70s, early 80s to watch Blake 7, like the name Callie, and file it for when they had a child a few years later. Anyway, so yes, so it's Blake. The show is Blake 7, but for a minority of the time, are there 7, and for only half the time is there Blake. So it's a very inaccurately named show for most of its run.
Yeah, but it was basically part of the pitch, wasn't it? Because Terry Nation was like, it's the Magnificent 7 in space.
Well, it was the Dirty Dozen in space.
The Dirty Dozen in space, which is a dozen, not 7.
But it's a number though, so it's like you can see they kind of went, well, we want a number. And obviously it does mean that when you shorten Babylon 5 and Blake 7 to B5 and B7.
Yeah,
you've got 2 sci-fi shows with very similar abbreviations to get confused with each other.
True. Now, my big argument of late has been that Andor is Blake 7.
Now, I haven't seen Andor.
Right. Well,
I hear it's very good.
A lot of people think it's one of the best of the Star Wars TV series, and that could be arguable. I did end up watching them all in one go while I wrapped Christmas presents. And I could easily be distracted by the wrapping of the presents and still not miss anything. I do find some of the TV Star Wars are just a bit long-winded. And you're like, seriously, this is really slow. This is like watching old BBC TV. All right, the money's there, but, it looks nice, but it's basically like watching the stuff we used to watch, and especially that one, because it just is, it's the pacing, and of course there's the whole well, if you've not seen it, I genuinely don't want to spoil it because I don't want to deprive you of something that most people think is spectacular. For me, it's got to be The Mandalorian. That's my favourite of the TV Disney Star Warses.
Yes.
Without question. But Andor's got some nice bits, but it does have a lot of similarities with this and with the Empire being... It's the most fleshed out the Empire gets to be without just being the cartoon twiddly mustache villains.
Right, yeah. That makes sense. Which, I mean, obviously,
because,
in this you've got the Federation, which, apart from the name, has nothing in common with Star Trek.
And the logo behind the Blake 7 titles being the Starship Enterprise badge, but on its side. So it's like, here's the Federation knocked on its side.
Yes.
So that is,
and with the curves taken off. Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yes, I think I've had that pointed out before. I mean, there's also the question. I was thinking about this as well. Is obviously it's not directly compatible with the future of Doctor Who. But equally, I mean, the other, that we were saying about the Daleks turning up potentially, and obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah.
The other thing that Tom Baker and Gareth Thomas wanted to happen was for them to kind of walk past each other in a corridor and kind of nod, and have the Doctor and Blake kind of just acknowledge each other, and then
in the same way that there was supposed to be a parked TARDIS in one scene of Babylon 5.
That would have been great.
And you just walked past a police box at one point. And that was it. But is that a real thing, or is that just urban myth? But either way, it's nicer. It would have been a lovely moment.
There's supposed to be a TARDIS somewhere in the Red Dwarf model shop, but I still haven't been able to find it.
I think there's one in the graveyard of spaceships, because you see an Eagle lander.
Oh right, okay.
That one's much more identifiable. I think it's a Guelph one, but I think there's a TARDIS there.
Anyway, but obviously it's not. It doesn't fit into canonical Doctor Who, right? It is its own universe. This is the future. Do we get a year? I can't remember whether we get a given a year.
It's 700 years of after the new calendar.
Oh, okay,
or something like that. It's something nice and vague.
But it's
definitely without question the future, because there's whole scenes where they revisit Earth and somebody's built a house in the style of an 18th century house, or somebody else 20th century artifacts, or there's other stuff where they visit an old church where somebody just goes, "What's a church?" And there's stuff. And
you've got hyperdrive. You've got this whole empire that stretches out across the galaxy.
And there's a lot of other aliens. There's a lot of aliens out there.
Yes, there's a lot of aliens out there. Yeah, that we encounter various kind of weird. But and I guess this is the thing that I like about it, is that it's the BBC way of doing this, of going, we're not going to do sticky things on foreheads like Star Trek did. We're going to kind of do properly batshit crazy aliens with like horns on their heads, and
they're a lot more alien. Yes. The aliens, and there are some sort of human worlds that have gone back, to medieval times and stuff like that. Yeah. I get that. But you are completely right in saying that the aliens are a lot more alien, because in Star Trek your aliens are metaphors for other types of human, almost always.
Yes.
There's very rarely an alien turns up that's just actually full on alien. Even in the new, hang on, I get mixed up over which one. Is it Brave New Worlds? I skipped Discovery. And I've seen one episode of Prodigy, which I enjoyed because, me and animation. But I've skipped, and in Picard, I think I gave like an episode for, and I thought I'll wait till they're all available and I'll watch them in one go. But I caught myself bored and awake in the middle of the night, and I watched Star Trek Brave New Worlds and thoroughly enjoyed it, because it was like watching original Star Trek from the 60s. It was lovely. But yeah, the alien races are definitely extensions of human conditions in Star Trek, but here they're just plain wacky, like the decimers and the giant. There's a lot of heads in suspended animation kind of thing going on. And, and
sentient sand and things like that.
Yeah, and also they've got, like you've said, it's gone BBC. Oh, is this sentient? Yeah, it's a sand. Or that thing that Aurak takes on, that's a rock that just reflects things back to you. So what's the alien this week? It's a rock.
It's a rock.
Okay, then.
See,
right, well, that's easy to buy.
Now you're talking individual plots, which I can't remember. You know,
okay,
I'd have to watch it
But I
again.
have rewatched this quite a few times, because
yeah.
it's something you can put on in the background while you do other stuff. You're not going to miss it, and it's just cracking. It is.
Should we talk about these two episodes then? Because
if you want, go on then.
We should probably kind of talk a bit more about the opening.
Okay, so
the opening plots
episode...
and the stuff that goes over your head when you're 6, like the fact that they've manipulated 3 kids into thinking they've been molested by Blake.
Yeah, and then they've been put through a lie detector, so they definitely think it's true, which means they're going to spend the rest of their life being abused. So then we've got the whole thing of, well, if you think you've been abused and you've got a memory of being abused, have you actually been abused? Yes, you have by the system, but, oh my God, and did they go back in and remove those memories later on or not? And they're so callous about it. It's so matter of fact, like, yeah, this is what we do. It's a Thursday. We're fine.
Yeah.
And he's been a leader of, right. So he was an alpha grade. Okay, so there's a whole Brave New World caste system going on, which is recreated in one of my all-time favorite games, Paranoia, with a different, which I'll discuss another time because we really should discuss that. But anyway, they've got the caste system. They've got alpha grades. They've got people who've got intelligence. So he was at some point an alpha grade. Now, it comes across that he was an engineer because he worked on the Aquitar project, but so did Avon, but so did everyone, because they were trying to get transmission of matter going. I think in one of the original drafts he might have potentially have been a teacher, but he formed a political party. And then he was getting somewhere, and then they wiped his brain. And I think looking back on it now, because I've been dissecting it, some other people must have come to him and gone, "Hey, you used to be someone. We'd like to join your party." And what they've done is, every time that's happened, is they've arrested those people as rebels, killed them, wiped his brain again, so that he's always like a sort of Firefly character to bring people to them, like a light of hope, but he's also a trap, like a honey trap, to get people to come to him and go.
Oh, so you think they've done it to him multiple times? Because that isn't
that's
clear from the
episode. It's not implied, but it's the only thing that would work in this universe, because he is such an identifiable character. But then they've wiped his brain so much he's not identifiable anymore. So does he get downgraded into a different caste? Because he's still got the intelligence. Are alpha grades made intelligent or not? Because I know Big Finish have kind of not tweaked it, but they've gone into a lot more depth. There are episodes where Villa's dad turns up, and you find out that Villa was possibly a higher grade than he was, but he pretends he's thicker, which is very Villa. Because he is the character I related to the most. But anyway.
Oh, Villa's great. You've got to love Villa, yes.
Yeah. So, we've got domes. I believe that it was set after some sort of nuclear war, but I don't know why everyone's in a dome. I mean, I know they're easier to control when they're in a big population centre, and it's illegal to go outside, again, like Paranoia. And
but there's also the fact that he thinks that, like, there's the whole, like, drinking water outside. So it's a question of, like, have they been, like you say, is there an actual thing that's happened that's contaminated the environment and that contamination has worn off, or is that just the story to keep the people subdued?
Yeah.
And
was there? Was there a story? Yeah,
and I suppose it doesn't really matter either way, really.
Yeah, because it's where are you right now in the story?
It's believable, but it's believable for the regime, that what we get to know of the regime. It's believable that they would have kind of put people in a dome and then convinced them that they couldn't go outside. I mean, like you get in Logan's Run. It's the same as Logan's Run, is that they're told they're not supposed to go outside, and then they do, and they find that there are people who are older than 30. Yeah. You know, it's that kind of.
Is Logan's Run what, 74? I think so. It would.
It's a few years before this, yeah. So it's a ssimilar kind of setup. And you've got people living in a dome and they're not allowed to go outside.
Yeah, and it does fit with a lot of the. Cause, I mean, we've got a lot of dystopian sci-fi now, but in the 70s there was a lot of dystopian sci-fi until Star Wars.
Right.
You know, you've got your Silent Runnings, you've got your Logan's Run.
Yeah.
And this just kind of fits in with that, but is on TV. So that's and was it Boy and His Dog, or was that a tiny bit later? But you've got a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff as well. It's like stuff set after. I mean, even your Planet of the Apes is early, and that's set after apparently an atomic war. Which doesn't get retrofitted until the new films.
Yeah.
But
then you've got the main character in this one for at least a chunk of the running time is the lawyer. Who clearly doesn't realise he's living in a dystopia, you know.
Yeah.
He clearly he clearly believes in the system, you know, this justice system they have where you get your evidence into your little sphere and then you put it into the computer and the computer decides guilt or innocence or whatever. But he's persuaded by Blake, which is interesting, isn't it? Like, he's persuaded by Blake enough to then do his own investigation, which obviously, you know, leads to him discovering that things are not all as they seem, and then it's too late because they bump him off and his poor lady wife. But he's kind of like the focus of the episode for a good chunk of the sort of second half, as he's kind of doing his investigation.
Because Blake's locked up. There's some great acting from Gareth Thomas. You can see why they got him. Because in a lesser actor's hands, it would have just not, you know, would have gone well over the top. And he's just magnificent. Specifically in this one. Specifically in this episode, these two episodes, he's just brilliant.
He does get a bit boring, though, I find.
Well, he is, and I think that's why Avon's such a better character.
Yeah.
Because Blake is, I am just righteous about everything at all times, but I'm also going to crumble under any major pressure, and that as seen in episode 2.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
You say crumble under major pressure.
Well,
they're going to shoot people.
They're going to shoot people every 30 seconds.
Yes.
Johnny Briggs' dad's going to shoot everyone. So, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
It's one of those.
That's a reference nobody should be getting.
Well, yeah. Yes. But it's one of those things where you're like. Well, I don't know. Would the Doctor act like Blake did in that situation?
Yes.
I'm like. But then I can see maybe Sylvester McCoy, maybe Hartnell and Troughton, you know, not if there was some other greater good to be had. I don't know. I mean, obviously David Tennant would be like, yeah. I think you're right. I think the Doctor would probably, broadly speaking, you know, surrender at that point.
Well, like the Ninth Doctor, it's like, you know, Avon calls him a coward, and the Doctor would have just gone always. You know, it's like
exactly.
So.
Yes.
Yeah, so
whereas, Avon's like, we shouldn't be bothered about these other fellow prisoners who we have no loyalty to at all. You know? Well, I mean, I suppose apart from
go on.
Maybe Villa. But I mean, I think, broadly speaking, these two episodes, the world is sketched in really well. You know, there's a lot of world building going on.
Lovely world building.
You've got all the Earth stuff in the first episode, and then you've got this prison run ship. You know, you've got the interplay between the three people on the flight deck who clearly have a very interesting kind of. They don't necessarily like each other. They're colleagues who have to work together.
The first 3 episodes have all got, and I hadn't spotted this at the time, but they've all got individual oppressive societies. You've got the Society of the Federation in episode 1. You've got the microcosm of the oppressive society in the prison ship, and then you've got the oppressive society of the religion in the 3rd episode. So you've got 3 different versions of repression of society, of people, and to some respect, it's Villa who's being repressed in each single one. But
poor Villa.
It is poor Villa. But there is a sort of microcosms of each of those until they start to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
Once they've got Calais.
Like we said, the adult theme of episode 1 is the whole, we've implanted these memories of paedophilia in these kids' heads.
Yes.
In episode 2, there's the undercurrent.
I do not think if the show was brought back that would be in there.
Oh, I doubt it.
I don't think so at all. I cannot work out what they would. It would take a very brave TV. They might do it if it came back on Apple, or if it came back on a streaming service. They might do that.
But broadcast at 7:15 on a Monday evening, you know.
Yeah, bit surprisingly dark.
It
but
is.
As an audience, you're on his side because he's innocent.
Yeah. No. I know there is that, but just the fact that is the depth to which that's the crime that the Federation decided to fit him up for. You know, it's not. It's, and I suppose it needs to be something like that, because that is the thing that is going to make people turn on a public figure.
But he's a public figure who doesn't know he's a public figure because he's had his brain manipulated so many times.
But anyway,
and he must keep going back in to have himself topped up because he keeps thinking he's got letters from his family.
This is true. Yes. So that's episode 1. Episode 2, obviously, you have the undercurrent of the fact that there are no provisions for Jenna on board this ship. The implication being that, like, women don't often get given this punishment of being sent to Cygnus Alpha.
I'm not quite sure why, and also you've got, I think, is it Pamela Salem who's in episode 3, and she's a woman, so I don't know what crime she's committed to be sent to Cygnus Alpha.
And then you've got obviously the Leslie thingamabob, who's on my list of Doctor Who actors, Leslie Schofield, who is thoroughly vile. And the implication, obviously,
a tiny bit rapey. Yeah.
Well, yes, the implication is
that's what's implied.
That's what's whether he ever actually gets, because there's a whole bit like we've got unfinished business, you know, obviously because he slaps her when she turns him down at the beginning, and then 4 months just pass in the space of like a scene.
I know, and they're all still wearing the same clothes and everything.
Well, I mean.
It's the BBC wardrobe department.
I guess no, but I think that
June
also
Hudson,
works. That works also in terms of just kind of going, this is how they treat their prisoners. You're not allowed a change of clothes. You know, we don't see the shower facilities. There must be shower facilities. You know, but obviously, So you've got these two. I mean, yes, I think it's all classified as a PG now, isn't it? I think that's the rating that the DVD's got.
I think so. Yeah.
But again, in the same way that like UFO deals with adult themes, but was broadcast to children.
Just looking for the box,
Blake 7 again is pre-Watershed, but it's dealing with some pretty adult concepts in these first 2 episodes.
Now, arguably,
which clearly went over your head.
Well, yeah, because I just thought, they're in prison. Oh, will they escape? Oh, no, they didn't escape.
Yeah.
Which is very, it's classic Terry Nation writing. Arguably, you sit down and the synopsis for episode 2 is they're on board a prison ship, they fail, the new ship turns up, they end up on the ship. It's getting them from Earth to on board Liberator. That's the purpose of episode 2.
That's the purpose of episode 2.
And it lasts 50 minutes, and the first 35... getting on for 40 minutes is a failed attempt to escape. A failed attempt to take the London.
But it's really good.
It was really good. Yeah.
I was gripped by it. Even watching it this time, I was gripped by it.
40 odd years later, you were gripped.
Because the characters are so well drawn. You've got the captain who's clearly been doing this for a while, who doesn't like having a rapey second in command, but has to tolerate having a rapey second in command. Under him, you've got the young guy.
Our future selves will thank us for talking like that.
Well, that is essentially the character. You've got the young guy who's trying to better himself and not wanting to kind of, he says, "I don't want to be doing this all my life." Oh, what have I just said? And the captain's like, "No, I understand. Like, I don't want to have been doing this all of my life, but I have been."
Yeah.
And then you've obviously got you've got Leslie Schofield's character who gets a kick out of being in charge of all these prisoners. And then you've got the other crew who are kind of easily taken in by Villa's magic tricks.
Well, they really are.
And you've got the whole there's this space battle going on at a distance, which is kind of then affecting their travels, their safety, and ultimately is what provides them with the Liberator.
The thing is, at the beginning, they pick up bizarre meteorite activity.
Yeah.
And they mention that. Now, I feel like that was left over from an earlier draft because I think that was meant to be the ship.
Yeah.
They do have time distort engines, so that's the equivalent of warp engines.
Yeah.
Avon mentions, that's what they said about light speed later on, when it was impossible to go faster than light. So they've definitely got that. So the location of Cygnus Alpha, God knows where it is, because
it's a long way away.
It's a long way away, but if from a practical point of view, how many light years away is it? And then you've got the whole, just like Star Trek, once you've got massive distances, you've got massive periods of time which don't seem to affect the narrative, because they go, it's a 4-month trip.
Yes.
But they seem to arrive around the same time, but they don't, because the Liberator travels so fast.
Yes.
And so on. So
remind me, because I haven't seen episode 3 again. How fast does the Liberator go? Because they have a certain way of measuring its speed, don't they?
Well, how fast shall we go? Says Zen, and they go, and Blake goes, standard. And she goes, yeah, standard speed. And then
they have
later on they go standard by 8,
and
standard by 4.
Yeah.
So that's what they call it. Now you just know that there's.
I know, because in a UFO it's Sol, it's multiples of Sol, isn't it? And in Blake 7, I knew it wasn't that. It's multiples of standard, right?
And then the distance is measured in spatials.
Right. Yes.
Because it's travelling at 1,000 spatials above the planet, and you're like, what is that? Kilometers? Is that way?
What? Yeah.
Yeah. So
can we talk about the quality of of what we get on DVD?
Yeah.
Because particularly the film stuff.
Yeah.
It struck me when I was watching it. I was like, we are so blessed as Doctor Who fans with what the restoration team have done over the years to clean it all up. And Blake 7 has not had that treatment. And so the film stuff in particular is really scratchy compared to the videotape. And you're just like, we're on film now. Wow, this is scratched to Davy Jones.
And as always, there's random bits which were still shot in studio on film.
Yes.
Like Avon in the computer room.
Yeah. They were like,
it's all on
and then
film,
there's the later bit in the computer room which is in the studio. And so you're just like, well, why did they shoot that bit on film? I suppose they had budget to do location filming for each episode, and that one didn't have anything other than we're on a spaceship. And I suppose it makes the tunnel between the spaceships look really impressive.
Yes. Yeah.
So it makes sense that bit's on film.
Yeah, models always look better on film.
Yeah. But it just reminded me how lucky we are as Doctor Who fans to get what we get.
Well, God,
in terms of those cleaned up.
The thing is, right, it's not like I'm introducing this to you. I'm not going because, for your consideration. The problem is we don't know what the other person's watched and hasn't watched. Broadly speaking, we've got a good idea. But I had it in my head you hadn't seen Blake 7, which is why I was going, hey, Blake 7. But you had seen them. So I was...
but as I say, just the once and a long time ago. So I'm quite happy to kind of revisit this. And to encourage people and say, look, if you like Doctor Who, particularly if you like classic Doctor Who,
old Doctor Who,
and particularly if you like the Graham Williams era of Doctor Who, let's be honest, because that's what was, as I said, that was what was being broadcast in parallel. This starts partway through season 15, and then I guess the subsequent series would have overlapped with season 16, 17, 18. Well, obviously 18 is a change of direction for Doctor Who. I guess series 3 and 4 of Blake 7 feel different from series 1 and 2, but yeah.
Especially season 4.
Yes.
I mean, season 4 only exists on a whim.
Yes, I realised that. The controller was like, put a message out at the end of series 3 to say this will come back, and then all the cast and crew are like, will it? We didn't know.
Well, the ship's been destroyed. What? Hey, there's nothing.
Well, and if you look at the broadcast dates, there is then a bigger gap between series 3 and 4.
Yeah,
because they clearly were like, hang on, we need to kind of,
Well, to be fair, there will be Blake 7 fans screaming at the mic, going, "Don't call it season 4. It's season D."
Oh yes, D. Yes.
Yeah, A, B, C, and D. Sorry,
A, B, C, and D. Yes.
Sorry, but like the Prisoner, but yeah. So, and of course, I'm just got episode 2 on now on my TV. The video stuff, the stuff on film is the gap in between, is the gap in the lining of the spaceship.
So there's all that stuff as
which
well.
allows you to get a lot of shadows in a kind of. I mean, obviously it's not Alien, but you do get it's a darker than more.
I mean, I guess it probably was also which bits can we fit in the studio.
Yeah,
and they were clearly like, well, we need the main set in the studio. There's also the weird thing about the fact that like episode 1 ends with.
Yep.
I haven't compared the two, but I'm guessing a whole bunch of extras, along with Villa and Jenna and Blake, and then episode 2 starts, and somehow Gan and Avon are now sitting in some of those seats where they weren't at the end of episode 1, but they must have been there all along in universe. But as far as production went, they clearly were like, well, we don't want to pay these guys for an extra episode just to be in a scene as extras at the end, so we're not going to introduce them until the next episode.
But that makes a lot of sense. Well, there were other cells as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's a cracking series. And you know what? If you like Andor and you like old Doctor Who, yes, this is for you.
And I suppose the other comparison.
Go on.
The other comparison to make, which I've seen made, Firefly.
Oh God, yeah. Well, that's even the bloke who created Firefly. He actually said, he loved Blake Seven. That was a motivation. I mean, Blake Seven is beloved by a lot of people who make really great TV.
Interesting, because I read the opposite. I read that Joss Whedon had been asked about inspiration, and he said no, it wasn't a direct inspiration for Firefly. So I don't know. Depends on whose sources are correct.
I shall, because I've got the making of book somewhere. Yes, massive Firefly fan. I came second in the Firefly costume competition when and there is a photograph somewhere on the internet of me dressed as the statue of Jane, and I was only beaten by somebody dressed as a dinosaur from Wash's thing. They actually came in dressed as Wash, riding a T-Rex. They now work as a special effects person, and I don't.
Oh,
so yeah,
Michael.
that was it. That was at a convention just outside Heathrow back in the day. In fact, it was the precise day that Dalek was broadcast, because I remember in the evening, before the evening festivities progressed, somebody put Dalek on a giant TV screen, so I watched it in a room full of Firefly fans. So that was nice.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's where we're at with Blake 7. You know what we are? There's too many. There's just too many.
Well, before that, we have to do production side of things.
Okay.
So I did some counting up. So of the 52 episodes, 29 are directed by Doctor Who directors.
I'm not going to name them. Go on.
But no, I'm not going to name them. No. Plus one extra by production assistant Victor's Ritellis. He was production assistant on Doctor Who. He was the guy that had his arm smeared in honey when William Russell refused to have it smeared in honey for the Crusade. So, technically, a guy who played Ian Chesterton briefly directed an episode of Blake 7.
Right. Got you.
The first 3 series were produced by David Maloney, who directed loads of Doctor Who. The music was by Dudley Simpson, apart from 2 episodes, one of which was directed by Douglas Camfield because Camfield didn't like Dudley Simpson. And the
which
other...
I'd love to know more about.
Well, yeah, they clearly fell out at some point. And the other was Liz Parker, who went on to score Time Lash, which also starred Paul Darrow. So it all links up.
I love Time Lash. We should just discuss that sometime.
We should do that. 32 episodes written by Doctor Who writers, which was Terry Nation, Chris Boucher, and Robert Holmes.
Yep.
So, again, more than half written by Doctor Who writers.
Well, also, to be fair, Doctor Who writing royalty.
Well, yes, exactly. And obviously, Holmes recommended Boucher for the script editor job. You also have Roger Parks, who wrote 3 episodes of Blake 7, who wrote for The Prisoner.
Oh!
He wrote
not put 2 and 2 together.
He wrote A Change of Mind.
Nice. See, I'm happy with that. I am.
And then the weirdest link, this is where I'm going to stop. We're going to go into actors in a minute. But the weirdest link, Rod Beecham, who wrote 1 episode, played Corporal Lane in The Web of Fear.
Well, there you go.
There you go. So actor turned writer wrote an episode of Blake 7.
Now, okay, so while we're discussing this, there is a crossover. There is somebody who appeared in there is something that appears in. Sorry, forget it. It's in Neil Perriman's book. There's a sofa that appears in episode 1.
I've got it on my notes.
I've got it on my notes. You've got it on your notes. The sofa. Oh,
yes.
right. Forget it.
Yes.
I bow to your superior knowledge. You go for it. Because all I've got are the obviouses.
The sofas from Robots of Death appear in episode 1. Also, though, you know when they go down into the depths of the city and out through the door?
Yep.
On the left-hand side of the screen is a console from Moonbase, from UFO, which then appeared in The Green Death in Doctor Who, and then in this. So it's a piece of prop from the Jerry Anderson stable. And the first actor on my list also links us to Jerry Anderson and Doctor Who at the same time.
I'll go for it.
So Dev Tarrant was played by Jeremy Wilkin.
Yeah.
And it's funny actually. I recently listened to the first episode of our UFO cast.
Yeah.
And he appears in the first episode of UFO because he's on the submarine in UFO.
Yes.
But he was also He was also the second Virgil Tracy. So the guy who played Virgil Tracy in the last 6 episodes of Thunderbirds and the movies of Thunderbirds. And then obviously in Doctor Who, he's the villain as Kelman from Revenge of the Cybermen.
Well, that's just
which should have been a clue to the fact that he was going to be a wrong un in this one, even though he starts off as a good guy. But he's a double-crossing evil person.
And Big Finish do him proud.
You've then got Robert Beatty, who plays the leader of the rebels who get shot.
Now, right. Okay, my brain kept going, I know him, and right, so, is it Revenge of the Cybermen, or, hang on, or
it's a Cyberman story, but not that one.
Oh, no, I'm going to bow. No, go for it.
He's General Cutler. He's the guy that runs the base in the 10th Planet.
Of course he is. Yes.
Just with a bit more hair.
Yeah.
Then you've got Margaret John. Very small part. Margaret John was the judge at Blake's trial. So the woman who basically kind of introduced.
I had her written down. It's fine.
She was in Fury
She's
from
in
the Deep.
Fury of the Deep and The Idiot's Lantern.
And The Idiot's Lantern, yes. And I didn't make that connection between those two for years. And then I read it somewhere. I was like, she's the old lady in The Idiot's Lantern.
But she was the person that I thought she was last time. When I thought it was somebody from... Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a callback to last time's episode. Hooray.
Okay, then you've got Nigel Lambert. Nigel Lambert is the guy who, you know, when they go to check the records and find out those 3 kids were taken away from school, and they're like, aha.
Who's in a lot of sitcoms as well.
He's the voice of Look Around You, if you've ever seen Look Around You.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yes. But in Doctor Who, he was the scientist.
That's on iPlayer. Right, stop listening to this and go and watch it now.
Go and do Look Around You. Yeah. He's the scientist Hardin in The Leisure Hive.
Right, yes.
And the voice of the glass pyramid in Doctor Who Flux. You know, there's floaty glass pyramids in the temple. You've probably forgotten Doctor Who Flux, haven't you? Jodie Whittaker's, 6-part epic from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He was the floaty priest triangle
I honestly thought you meant the card game.
What card game?
I know. Doctor Who Flux.
Doctor Who Flux. Yes.
Yes.
Which I was have.
Like, yes. How? Well, I actually, because have you ever done any of those escape room games you can get from Amazon?
No, I haven't.
Because they're brilliant. Well, they are superb. You need to do those. I've done about 9 of them. They are brilliant. Okay. You're going to get to play them once, and then you throw the box.
Yeah. Actually, no, I have. Yeah, I have done one of those. Once.
Well, if you get the app, it's got a sound effects tape that gives you a bit of atmosphere that plays while you're playing, depending on where they're set. And I thought it was Flux, but there was going to be some sort of... See, that's how my head works. I was 17 steps away from the actual idea of a Jodie Whittaker episode.
Brilliant.
So there you go. Right.
I think we should do guest cast, and then we'll come back to the main cast in a minute. So there's one more from episode 1, And I spent the whole episode going, I know you, I know you, I know you, I know you, and I couldn't for the life of me work out who it was.
Everyone I've got.
Okay, so Ven Glind, the evil boss at the top of the pyramid, the guy who's like...
Yeah.
There's him and Morag,
Yes.
He was Robert James.
Right.
Who was Lesterson in The Power of the Daleks.
Oh, there you go.
And a priest in The Mask of Mandragora. But I didn't figure that out. I had to look him up. I was like, I know who you are. All the other ones I recognised and figured out who
Which,
they were.
of course, is set in Port Merion. And
yes.
we're back to the UFO cast.
And we're back to the prisoner. Right.
The prisoner,
We'll come back to the regular cast. So in episode 2, you've got Glyn Owen, who would go on to play Rom Dutt in The Power of Kroll.
Right.
He's the captain of the ship.
Yep.
You've got evil rapey guy played by Leslie Schofield.
Leslie Schofield, yes. Or Johnny Briggs's dad, as he was known in my head.
Now, I think there's a theme. A lot of these people had appeared in Doctor Who the previous year or would appear in Doctor Who the next year. So Leslie Schofield was in The Face of Evil as one of Leela's tribe.
That's
but
so good.
He had also played a Civil War soldier, an American Civil War soldier in the War Games. Yes. Yankee Spies. Oh, no, that wasn't him. That was David Garfield, who was also in The Face of Evil, It all links up.
We've gone full circle.
Circle, yes. Then you have the third member of the crew of the spaceship. I had to look up the actor's name because I couldn't remember the actor's name. Norman Tipton, who played Idas, or is it Edas, from Underworld. So literally, in the same week that he's in Blake 7, he's also in Doctor Who. He's literally in 2 things at once. And then this one is a really obscure, but I was convinced that I recognised one of the guards on the spaceship, one of the non-speaking guards.
Yes.
I was like, one of them looks familiar, and I looked him up, and his name is Harry Fielder, and he played lots of guards in Doctor Who.
Yes.
So he was uncredited in Doctor Who, and he's uncredited this, but he's definitely the same bloke, because his face looked familiar. Shall we do the regular cast? In fact, you can take over at this point. The regular cast of Blake 7.
Hang on. Apparently, Pippa Street was also in... Pippa Street, who's in episode 1, was also in UFO, apparently.
Oh, in UFO? Okay, I did. Yes, all right. Pippa Street. Okay.
That's all I've got. Okay, so...
You tell me which regular cast have done Doctor Who, whether on TV or on Big Finish, because some of them have done Big Finish, obviously.
Gareth Thomas, not TV, only Big Finish. He was in Paul McGann's first one, Storm Warning.
Which I had not... So when that came out, I didn't know about Blake 7, so he was a complete... Yeah. But also in Torchwood.
Yes.
As a rapist.
Well, there you go. Yes. He's no longer with us, so there's no more Blake in Blake 7 on audio. Okay.
No, exactly.
Michael Keating, who, for a lot of people, is the vicar in EastEnders. He was in Sunmakers.
Yes. And that was what got him the role in this.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Let me see. He's also done a lot of Big Finish. He's done some Doctor Who Big Finish, and he's also done Blake 7 Big Finish. Okay,
and he's very good. He's probably my favourite member of the 7.
And he's such a nice bloke if you meet him. Okay. Avon, Paul Darrow, obviously Time Lash, Malin Tecker, and Unit Soldier, Corporal What's-His-Face in the Dinosaur, in the Silurian story.
Silurians, yes.
Okay, so, Zen, and Aurak, Peter Tuddenham. Okay, Ark in Space. As the voice.
Yeah.
There we go. Now,
one of the voices from the past that is that he the voice that speaks while Sarah Jane is being cryogenically frozen?
Yep. He's also he's a voice in Time in the Rani as well.
Is he? Oh, one of the voices of the brain. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. So now here's where it gets a bit vague. So you've got Callie Jan Chappell. Now, obviously, she does the big finishes. She's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. They've totally developed everything. But she's also in, and I don't know if you're going to let me have this one, Shakedown.
Oh, I read that she was in Shakedown.
So she's in Shakedown,
but it's Doctor Who. You can have that.
It's BBB.
I've never seen Shakedown. I'm aware of Shakedown. I've never seen it.
Perhaps that's something we should do together at some point. I've not either.
I have read that of those BBV spin-offs, that Shakedown is one of the better ones.
I've got the book somewhere.
Oh, right. There was a book of it, wasn't there? Okay.
Yeah, it was one of the Virgin novels. Anyway, let's get back to that one.
Let's keep going.
Jacqueline Pearce. Okay, so she's Councillor Illustra in the Time War Big Finishes.
Yes.
With the War Doctor. Now, she's really good mates in real life. I know she's no longer with us. She was really good mates with John Hurt. And that was part of the whole... So they were in something together, Doctor Who, when he was doing the War Doctor.
Yes.
So Illustra's now regenerated into somebody else. And, of course, we've now got a new War Doctor who I just think is brilliant. Yes. Okay.
But she was also in Doctor Who.
But she's also in Doctor Who as, you've seen the two Doctors.
Chasini the Franzine Grigg.
Yes, and she's also in Death Comes to Time, which is not Big Finish, but is an audio.
BBC. I mean, that was at the time. That was New Doctor Who. That was New Doctor Who at the
proper
time.
Doctor Who, yeah.
Yeah, they made a big thing of that.
Flash animation, yeah, exactly. You've got Sally Nivette, Big Finish Cyberman Series 5, where she plays Dr. Cyberman Allen, which is just the best Cyberman story. And she's also been known for Emmerdale forever. Okay, but that's it. That's all I can find.
Apparently, David Jackson, who was Gan, also has done a Big Finish at some point.
Well, he's also done. He did. The last thing he ever did was a voice in Sarah Jane's Adventures.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Is that Glynis Barber's never done anything? Or
no, she's not. Well, let me say.
Gisette Simon or Stephen Pacey.
Big Finish only. Stephen Pacey again. Big Finish. No big. Just Blake 7 Big Finish.
Oh, and then obviously Brian Croucher, Travis version 2, was in the Robots of Death.
Yes.
As Borg.
Yeah, as Borg. You've got extras like James Muir, who was a Tharol. Stephen Grief was in Space Precinct in Crime Traveller, but not Doctor Who. And then you've got Deep Roy.
When we do Crime Traveller, we'll have to do spot the Blake 7 actor.
Okay. The last thing we need to do now is for you to tell me what my homework is for next time.
Just before I say that, you and I are going to be at Hooverville at the end of this month, because this episode goes out in August.
Yes.
We're recording it in July, but this goes out in August. So the next time people might see us before our September episode comes out is at Hooverville at the very end of August. But at the beginning of September, we are going to be doing the 3 original Wallace and Gromit films.
Fantastic!
And the reason I'm picking them now is because we're handing over choosing to our wives for November and December. So this is September's is my last choice for the year. And there's a sequel to The Wrong Trousers coming out at Christmas.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, I'm so up for that.
So we have to do it now.
Experience at Aardman, yes.
Yes. And obviously there are only 2 speaking parts in those first 3 films, both of whom were in Doctor Who. One of the writers was a Doctor Who writer, so there's that to talk about. And then there's all the animation stuff. You and I can finally talk about our animation stuff.
Oh, yes. Also, I've got Bob Baker's autobiography, signed copy in the house. I shall read it.
There we go.
Because I've been meaning to read it for so long.
There we go. So that's what we're going to be doing in September.
Excellent choice. You know what? You said it was something slightly Doctor Who related with lots of people, and also it was something coming out next year. Well, and I did look, and everything due out next year that's a sequel is a horror movie, and I'm thinking,
it's Christmas this year. Also, I know this is predominantly a sci-fi podcast.
Yeah.
Wallace and Gromit sort of straddles genres, but one of them is definitely science fiction. There is a science fiction-y element
I've got no problem with that.
To all of their stories.
And, sorry, I'll shut up. I've just realised there is a crossover that you won't know about.
Is there? Oh,
with
interesting.
Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'll be very impressed if you can find it, because it's only a couple of frames. But anyway.
Thank you, Michael, for bringing Blake 7. I have thoroughly enjoyed revisiting those first 2 episodes. If I had the time in my life to watch the other 50, I would. For our listeners, if you have that time, do go out and watch Blake 7. It is well worth it. And so I will say goodbye at this point, and we'll leave the final word, as ever, to my friend Michael.
Be seeing you. That was the Tin Dog Podcast. Available on Spotify, iTunes, Acast, Stitcher, and wherever good podcasts are found. Get early access to content by subscribing to the Tin Dog Podcast YouTube channel. You can support the show at patreon.com/tindog. Contact the show on Twitter at tindogpodcast or email tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. All of the things discussed are the intellectual property of others. No infringement is intended. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.